Good morning, junk removal warriors. Joseph here, VETS Haul Junk Removal in Stafford, Virginia, on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. And I wanted to talk about something that all of us encounter in our areas, and it is cheap haulers. I was involved in an online conversation this morning, and there was somebody talking about how a cheap hauler probably dumps their load in the wood line. They're illegal dumpers. There was the assumption that because this individual charges extremely low rates, that he's probably an illegal dumper. And my first point is we shouldn't concern ourselves with our competition who we believe may be illegally dumping, because first off, they're not our competition. You shouldn't concern yourself with what your competitors are doing or not doing. Your competitors have no real bearing on your success and the success of your business. Instead, you should have only one competitor, and that competitor is yourself. And secondly, I've encountered cheap haulers in my market. Typically, they don't last long, because if they are dumping in the wood line, eventually and most assuredly they will get caught. But before you assume that one of your competitors is illegally dumping, you should realize, warriors, that all of us come to the table with different levels of overhead. There is a hauler in my area, and he's been in business for a couple of years. He's not licensed, not insured, doesn't drive a wrapped vehicle. I imagine doesn't provide benefits to his one and only employee, because his employee is a family member, and I believe his employee is regularly indigent. So this particular hauler has very little overhead. You can just look at his operation and determine that he has very little overhead. Compared to our overhead, for example, I would not survive in the junk removal space if my rates were as low as this particular competitor. So let's not assume that just because our competitors have extremely low rates that they're illegal dumpers. That being said, there's also the concern that, well, since this hauler's rates are so low, that he's taking business away from us, me and you. And I think that's false as well, warriors, because I target a completely different demographic of clientele compared to the individual I'm speaking of. I don't want lowballing customers. You can't build a long-term business on the cheap customers, and there are cheap customers. There's not as many cheap customers as many of us think, in as much as there aren't talented haulers who are able to sell their rates to the customer. I guess what I'm saying is, before you make the assumption that there's nothing but cheap customers in your area, you should take a look in the mirror. And maybe it's the fact that you're not very good at convincing the customers that they should pay your higher rates, but that's neither here nor there. I digress. Let's get back to the topic at hand. When I hear individuals complaining about the cheap haulers undercutting them in their market, I like to say, instead, you should reach out to your competitors, if you will, the cheap haulers, and educate them, warriors, about why they should raise their prices. Sometimes it's not a matter of the individual is illegal dumping and that's why his rates are so low. Oftentimes is that the individual doesn't know any better. He doesn't have very much business acumen. He's perhaps not confident in himself. He probably doesn't know what he's doing. So when he's charging customers really low rates, does that hurt you? If you're chasing the same type of clients that he is, it could be. But you should focus on the higher end clients. And instead, warriors, I like to advise individuals to reach out to all of the haulers in your area, especially those you deem as lowballers, and try to educate your competition. Try to show them the way so that everyone is at the same price point. When a customer calls you and you're at X amount of dollars for removing whatever, and the customer decides, well, you're a little too much. You're more than I'm willing to pay. And then like a good customer, they call around and get a few estimates from various haulers in your area because you've done your due diligence and you've contacted and created a relationship with your competitors, and your competitors know that they should raise their rates. Well, when that customer calls your competitor, the customer finds that your competitors are even keel with yours, and the customer will call a third competitor and a fourth competitor, and pretty soon the customer just accepts the fact that, well, I'm gonna pay X amount of dollars to remove this particular piece of furniture or item. And that all comes back around, warriors. I would rather work with my competition than work against them. But remember, many of us come to the table with varying levels of overhead. For example, this particular lowballer hauler in my area, he dumps on the residential side of my landfill. There are two sides to my landfill. There's the business side and there's the residential side. The residential side charges $5 a truckload. The commercial side charges significantly more and by weight. And I often see my competitor dumping his load on the residential side, though he is a business. But I'm not going to drop the dime on him. We all started somewhere. Everyone needs to make a living. And if I drop the dime on my competition, that's just a reflection of me. And I don't operate off of jealousy or spite. Instead, I feed this guy jobs every so often. And by the same token, when there are junk removal projects that he can't handle because they're too large for his operation, he refers them to me. That's what I mean when I say everyone benefits when you work with your competition. And I'm living proof. So reach out to your competitors, attempt to educate your competitors.
Wooden bench back there.
Got it. Wooden bench in the back.
And this right here. And can you take that trash can also?
Of course, sir.
I didn't know if I forgot to ask, but I didn't know if you could also take it.
No big deal.
Plastic.
Sure.
Okay. This TV, this leaf blower,
Yes, sir.
and then this china cabinet.
Will do.
Glass and everything. And I'll show you the.
This sofa here.
Yeah, will do.
And this sleeper sofa here.
Yeah.